we are beginning. And the first thing I want to do is thank all of you, beyond just your service, your selfless service, as we all have recognized two that have given their lives in the line of duty in Baltimore. And, you know, our hearts are out to all those in red. You know, it's challenging times, and I know we are supporting the community with our own apparatus and vehicles. And I believe, Chief, you're also going to the services,
Yes.
for at least the one, if not both.
Yes.
So I appreciate that in, you know, providing all of our condolences from Carroll County and Carroll County's government to those that have lost their lives in trying to save others. What I'd like to do is just quickly on to my right and left, we have Commissioner Garing, Commissioner Gordon. I'm again Commissioner Rothstein. Got Commissioner Kyler, Commissioner Vigliotti, and our Chief Administrator, Roberta Wyndham. And all welcoming you as, you know, we know you're part of the family, but why don't we go down the line and, you know, introduce yourselves, because we are being televised for the, as Commissioner Wance would always say, the thousands and thousands that are watching. But, you know, it's a lot. And it kind of surprises us sometimes just who is watching. But if you can, yes.
Dan Plunkert, I represent the central region for ESAC.
Michael Karolinko, I am the president of the Carroll County Professional Firefighters and Paramedics, and I am the career union representative to ESAC from the department.
Chief Michael Robinson, Director, Department of Fire and EMS.
Rick Baker, I'm the ESAC Chair, and I also represent the Southern District Volunteer Fire Departments of Mount Airy, Sykesville, Gamber, and Winfield.
Andrew Wooden, I'm the chairman of FROPS, the Fire Rescue Operations Committee, so I represent all 14 fire chiefs from the surrounding companies.
Susan Mott, president of the Carroll County Volunteer Emergency Services Association, and I too represent all 14 companies.
Bob Buckley, and I am the career non-union representative for ESAC.
Linus Arcides, I'm vice chair of ESAC. I represent the East Region, Lyndborough, Manchester, and Hampstead.
Okay.
John Murphy, one of the 3 citizen representatives to the county.
Okay, John, why don't you come on up to Roberta's left, and feel free to be at the table. Thank you for being here. Okay, I think Michael will hand it over to you so we can talk about where we're at with the budget and the positions and the remaining 7 stations.
Yes. And we want to thank the board and the previous board for all their support in our short period of existence. We're making progress. Right now, we're up to 157 employees. We just began with 28 new employees 2 weeks ago, and those allowed us to fill out all of our current vacancies, as well as fill 15 of the 24 floater positions. We've also been active on the staff side. Today, our quartermaster position began. We're now 3 weeks into our 2 billing technicians, and Monday we're going to begin interviews for the data analyst position. So in a short period of time, we've built ourselves up. We've been operational now since June the 8th, and as indicated by our billing, we're very active. We're running, again, primarily EMS calls. We have had some glitches with everything. We have lost 9 people, and we anticipated that since we began for various reasons. There's a lot of internal dynamics to running a combination department. We're on top of things as quickly as they occur. I meet frequently with the volunteer organizations, particularly CC Visa, who I meet with their president on a regular basis. I meet with Chairman Baker on a regular basis, and it's important that we stay in touch among the key leadership within the system. And I'm always available to meet with any of the 14 companies, which I do on a regular basis. So we're still very much an evolving system, and so our challenge is moving forward for next year. So in the 3-year staffing plan, year 3 would put 12 personnel each at the 7 remaining stations, which would mean EMS coverage with their medic units and 1 driver operator per shift. I did make an initial presentation back in September for the board, and since then I've been working along with ESAC, and ESAC now has a new subcommittee that's going to be coming up with their contingency. I have my own contingency, and what we're trying to look at is a couple of the key elements that we have identified. The first being supervision is, and a lot of these things we really didn't know about until we started our operations. So supervision currently is 24/7 at 3 stations, those stations being Mount Airy, Sykesville, and Westminster. And 2 of those stations, Westminster and Mount Airy, now have as many as 8 people on a shift. So looking at the standards for supervision of 5 to 1 or 3 to 5, we're trying to be consistent with that. Our challenge is where we're having a lot of problems, we don't have supervision. So part of a plan we'll be ready to show you in about a month or so is going to look at a couple of different ways that we can extend that supervision with what I will call regional officer coverage. So those stations that have officers, I'll use Sykesville as an example. Gamber, when they come on board, Sykesville is in close proximity to them. Their lieutenant could handle the administrative duties there. Westminster could handle the administrative duties at Reese. So we're looking at a couple of different options that wouldn't require additional positions. Another model that we're looking at is taking our 3 EMS chase cars, which have been extremely busy, and they have paramedics and paramedic firefighters on there, and taking one of those cars, upgrading those 4 positions to lieutenants, which would be at minimal cost because they wouldn't be new positions, and that would allow, depending which of the cars we would select, to go out and supervise 2 or 3 stations, and they have the mobility to do that without disrupting coverage. So we're trying to look at several different models that we would propose to try to offset requiring a lot of additional positions in the budget year.
And ESAC hasn't seen any of those yet.
And ESAC hasn't seen those. And so ESAC, at their last meeting, and then I'll turn it over to Rick Baker to talk more about all of this, is coming up with their own plans, which is really an extension of where they are with the original strategic plan. So with that, I'll turn it over to Rick.
Bear with me 1 second.
Yes.
Any questions? I have just a quick one comment. We just approved the quartermaster vehicle today.
Yes, we think.
That's good news for the inbound quartermaster, right?
Yes.
The 9 folks that have been lost, is there, and I know you said there was different reasons, but are there trends at all that can be seen through?
Well, and what we try to do in concert with HR is try to do exit interviews on all of those. Some of those they haven't been. 3 of those people we have lost for disciplinary reasons, which is something to be expected. Some people believed once they got here that this was not what they thought it would be. They've gone elsewhere, and in following up with them, they've already left those other places where they left us for. So one of the things that I'll bring up before I turn it over to Rick is, as you all are aware, the legislature passed a bill which created a commission. That commission's due to report at the end of November, and I think some of the recommendations that will come out will be unfunded mandates to try to retain people. People typically don't come into these careers to make money. They come into these careers for various reasons, the first of which they have a passion towards this type of profession, you know, much like the military and people that join the voluntary military. So we're trying to look at whatever trends are there. Our challenge being is in this next year, just from the regular attritional turnovers and the many vacancies people have, is there's going to be probably 1,200 positions in the region. And when I say the region, the Baltimore-Washington region, which includes the many jurisdictions in Northern Virginia and D.C. And those people that are in competition for our positions are really the same pool that are looking. And so our challenge moving forward is being able to continue growth of those positions in terms of pay and trying to achieve parity with the other jurisdictions, continuing to look at some of the other incentives. We have probably the best educational incentive out there, some of the best health care, and probably the other area that, and I know they're already working on enhancements based on the actuarial study, would be pension enhancements. So those are kind of the things that when you look at those 9 people, why they left. And again, we're primarily, and by design, we're primarily an EMS delivery system who occasionally runs to fires. Last year we had 52 working fires, which is defined as everyone on the assignment had a job to do for an hour or more. So 52 times a year, and to the credit of our volunteers in the system, we average on working fires probably 60 and more people. The challenge is the mobilization component from the time of alarm to the time of first water on the scene. And there's national standards of cover that will look at all of those things, that once we get our data analyst on board, we're going to be able to measure that. Our first project is to take our statistical reporting, which currently is in 14 silos, and carrying that into a single silo, and then we'll be reporting as a jurisdiction. Even though we've been operational now for about pushing 6 months, the challenge is we're still not recognized as the other county jurisdictions as a single county agency. We're still reporting individually. And one of the things, looking at the FEMA grants, we are ineligible for those FEMA grants until such time that we put all of our data into a single silo and report as a jurisdiction. So that's a critical element that we have to look at. So there's still a lot of gaps within our system, and again, I'm grateful for all the staff positions we've had. Our other big initiative moving forward is getting another senior level manager and assistant chief uniformed on board that would cover operations, because right now my 2 assistant chiefs have a lot of overlapping areas of responsibility, and as we're learning from a lot of our HR issues and things, we need one point of contact for each of the 4 shift commanders. We need someone that's going to be continuously overseeing our professional standards, our internal investigations, and customer service areas. And with one position, we can begin to address that gap. In the interim, between the 3 of us that are senior level managers in the organization, we're covering those. And I got to acknowledge my administrative assistant back there taking notes, Callie. If it wasn't for Callie, we'd all be lost. So lot of moving parts. The billing has given us a lot of additional duties, and part of the billing are the regular subpoenas that come in from the various attorneys, the state's attorney, maintaining the HIPAA responsibilities. So lots of things going on every day. But we are moving forward. We're managing things. We're providing some professional development and getting ready to do a couple of programs so we can assure the ongoing development of our leadership and a succession plan for the future. And you know, the volunteers have done very well in integrating with us, have made it very accommodating in each of the 6 stations, actually 7 with Winfield where we have a chase car. They've loaned us vehicles till our fleet can get up and running, and so a lot of positives in that relationships. But like with any large family, when you put people under one roof, there's always going to be some internal dynamics, and we work on those as they occur. Most of those all come back to communications issues on both sides, and that's part of a combination department. So as we develop more integrated policies, I think we're going to be doing well moving forward, and we hope to be able to maintain a robust program that brings in people, and the most important part of that is going to be the retention.
Okay. I appreciate the detail you provide. Is there any questions or comments? Guys over here? No?
All good.
Yeah, Rick?
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
So I think we're done, huh?
Hey, I'm ready.
So, yeah, lots happened in the last 4 months with 157 employees to help supplement the volunteer force here in the county. ESAC has been very busy with providing recommendations to the chief of the department, reviewing policies, sometimes more once or twice. And we will discuss some of these activities during the later part of the meeting as an example or two. Earlier, I sent some articles to you guys to take a look at. And there's some pretty telling information in there, but I think if you were to look at it from a national statistic with some of those things where we talk about another staffing statistic that the legislators, that the volunteers dropped by 12% from 2012 to 2020, where the number of volunteers over 50 years of age nearly doubled in that same period. Represented 18.9% in 2012 and 34% in 2020. I mean, that's telling. I mean, it's, you know, us old guys are sticking around to help do what we can do, but we're not getting the younger folks in to come in and help supplement what we've had and historically in the past. Another thing that's kind of underscoring things is the AFG, or the firefighter grants and SAFER grants. I mean, they're up for the reauthorization. Now, I feel fairly confident that those things will get reauthorized. However, it still has to go through the process in Congress. Those things, especially the AFG grants and the SAFER grants, I mean, that helps provide a lot of money for staffing, equipment, and for other things in the fire service. One of the quotes that the president of the DC Fire and EMS Local number 36 says, if we're not there, there's no alternative to 911. You know, who are you going to call if you call 911, there's nobody there to answer the phone? So these are things that are really concerning me. I know it concerns a lot of the people here sitting around this table here, but why a lot of people here took off work today to come here to have this conversation. It's a national issue. And it's so much a national issue that the U.S. Fire Administration Director has made this one of her 6 pillars to be addressed when they met just this month in October in Emmitsburg to have this conversation. So at the last couple of ESAC meetings, we keep talking about it, and you know, we're getting close to budget season again, and here we are to FY25, and the last phase is filling these 84 positions for the last 7 stations. And this action will get us to a baseline or a starting point. I mean, it's taken us 3 years to get to this point to where we're at right now. And I can't wait to see that happen. But I guess, I don't want to say I want some assurances, but I just wanted to have the conversation that those 84 positions are currently planned or budgeted for the FY25 budget. Because I'm getting asked those questions in the 2 out of the 4 stations in my district that don't have people yet. And I just wanted to ask that question here today and have that conversation, if there's something else that we need to be looking at. So.
Okay. Yes, they are, aren't they? I mean, they're
in the operating plan.
They're
I
in the-
mean, the budget's not the budget until.
Right, it's not a budget till you guys
But
decide in
it's-
May, right.
but it-
But they're currently in the operating.
the expected, I would say the expected budget, the operating plan in moving forward, they are embedded
Okay.
at this point. We then will have opportunities, as you know, early next year,
Right.
for about 2-3 months, to challenge the operating plan as written, to add, delete, move things around. And then, all the way up until May 31st of '24, we then approve the '25 budget. But right now, for plan moving forward, those positions are in place. Ensuring that you stay, I won't say on top of it, but continue to have these conversations are important.
Yep.
So, yes, that's, unless I'm told different.
Yeah, and I think you have to be concerned. It's a tough year. Right now, the proposed budget's short.
By $7 million.
So we either need to change revenues or change expenses. One of the things, this is my opinion, maybe not the whole group's, I think you guys already are, you really need to think about, if you want to add something, what do you want to take away? It's going to be very hard to add anything to this budget. And now it's possible, but I think one of the things we look at with any of the individual budgets is if people want things, what are they willing to give up? And for instance, you talked a little bit about benefits in the actuary study. Is that more important than something else you have? How important is that? It needs to be in the proposed budget, or probably we're not going to add to your budget. If you don't think it's important, then we don't either. So I think you guys are probably already talking about all this, but I think that's some of the things you need to be looking at.
So one of the things that we are talking about, and I'm asking any of the other members to sit here and chime in, is that these 84 positions that these 7 remaining sets is number one. We've got to have that for folks to get the staffing in the state.
Yep.
The 7 stations that currently do not have folks, county employees in there right now, or the luxury of having it backfilled by county employees, they're still struggling to hire people. They're still struggling to fill their shifts. And we hear that every day. So without trying to speak for everybody, but I know I'm speaking for 2 of the departments in my district, is that those 84 positions are important. Now, the additional positions that the chief mentioned earlier, now we've got 157 employees. And we've got 3 lieutenants at each of those stations, and we've got stations that don't have supervision in them. Our span of control is getting out of control. We need some more supervisory positions to help fill those gaps. I don't think it's fair to the chief to sit there and continue to try to operate a department that once we get to next July, that's going to be close to, 800 to 1,000 people, once you count the volunteers that are involved in the county, to be able to run this county's fire department on a staff of 5 people.
So what's the number of additional supervisory positions prior to FY '25 budget that you're even considering in an ask?
As we said, we still have to have that conversation. I want to have that conversation with the chief.
Yeah, that's fair, and that's going to be a very difficult, conversation amongst us as well, as you know, to do anything off-cycle. And as Commissioner Kyler shared, safety, security, quality of life, schools, safety, security, schools, quality of life, is where we're at. And, with walking into an operational budget with a $7 million deficit, that's the facts. I mean, this is open news. This is, you can open the books and look. And we are very transparent and open about that. And we have to figure out where that $7 million is going to come from, give or take,
And we try to tell each other, if I want to add something, you're going to look at me and say, what are you cutting? And that's how we look at the big picture, because
Right, and
we
it's,
can't reach up and grab it.
right, and it's a question of overcoming that $7 million deficit before we even consider adding something else. And so that's the,
But
right,
we'd rather hear from you,
Right.
you guys,
Right.
what's important to you.
right.
We don't want to
But those
guess at
eight,
that.
those 84 positions, I apologize, just one second, they are within the operational budget moving
That's good
forward.
news.
So that is good news. That's what you really want to hear.
Right.
So I just want to be clear that that is correct. My concern is that the 84 is funded, is that correct?
Yes.
The
But
84,
what Commissioner
It's-
Kyler is saying is we may have to seriously consider not doing that because we have to make decisions. I just want clarification on
the 84 is scheduled to be funded for the FY '25 budget.
that. Okay.
Yeah.
That's a better way of
Yeah,
Yes.
so
Yes.
the commissioners do an annual budget, which is required to be balanced every year. And then something unique to Carroll County, we do a 5-year operating plan. That 5-year operating plan tries to take into consideration everything that we know, what we need to know, what we should know, even down to every 3 years, we buy $1,500 worth of books for permits. Including, plans such as these. So yes, at the moment, the 84 positions are in the, for the remaining 7 stations, are in that operating plan, but nothing is funded until the budget.
It's passed.
I get that. I do
Now,
appreciate
and,
that.
and
But
maybe
my
it's
concern
easier,
is-
maybe it's easier to say the 84 plus the 24. It's, to me, what I was trying to say, maybe not very well, let's say you want 6 more people to wash trucks. Then you've got 84 and you've got 24. Is that more important than 6 of those or less important? That's what I'm trying to say is you guys need to look at, it's going to be very hard to add to what's in the budget, whether it's funded yet or not. So if you want to add something, I think you need to tell us, yeah, we really think this is more important. 3 more chase cars is more important than 4 more of something else. And we don't know that, you guys do. And I just think you guys have to recommend those decisions.
above and beyond the 84 that we
Yeah,
are.
yeah,
One of the-
I don't think,
But I apologize
Yeah,
real
please,
quick,
sir.
Mike. So you want to follow up?
I just, for the citizens of this community, I have concerns. I don't
Yeah.
think we're worried about washing units. I think we're worried about putting people on the street that when you dial 911, you know your family.
yeah,
is
and I
there.
apologize,
Yeah.
if you don't go straight in the mic, I can't hear. So I'm not sure
Your
which.
mic is off, by the way.
Oh,
Okay.
don't have to do
You may want to.
They're very directional.
And it is,
And I apologize, I have hearing aids, it's,
it is
I can't help
important,
it.
these mics are important because it is for the community, and Sue, just exactly what you said, or Ms. Ma, I apologize, that we want to share that this joint meeting amongst us is very focused, and it's very focused on ensuring the safety of our community is, is where we're at, is really laser focused right now in the operational budget, to specifically the 84 positions. It's not Washington, I mean, we may be using.
That was an example, I get it.
Examples that, but
Yeah.
they're not sometimes the best example. No, the 84 positions, they're in the plan to be budgeted. We will go through those deliberations, early next year with the intent, not the intent,
yeah.
with the mandate of approving a budget by May 31st for 1 July of '24 for a '25 budget. The concern was the additional leadership positions, and where that's going to be coming from, and when that's going to be asked for, and how we're going to address that. That's going to be the back and forth dialogue that you two, or all of you, need to have,
Yeah.
and then coming to us saying, this is the request, and us saying, okay, now we have to figure out where and how to make this happen.
And you guys are the experts on that, because it's a fine line. You said you've got places now without supervision. That's not efficient. You can't do that. So, but I'm no expert on, how you want to divvy that up.
Yeah.
I'd like to just interject. I'm going to quote 2 different people. One sitting here is Rick. We're in the process of establishing this for the first time, bringing over what was to a certain degree and transitioning it into what has to happen. So we're establishing requirements as we go through. So it's really hard to have some kind of equation of what's more important than something else, supplanting certain positions with other positions, because I think as we do this evaluation of where we need to be as an organization, they're not exclusive. They're not, separated from each other. They're equally important for certain functional reasons. And so I think we're really looking at the functional requirements of the department and identifying them for the first time. So 130 days in, we're looking at supervision. We have right now with the shift commanders who are overburdened with what they have to do, period, before supervision it comes in. They're at like a 1 to 35 ratio on supervision. When we start looking at, we can say very clearly, I'm not trying to air out any dirty laundry by any means, but when we start looking at unsupervised issues that can start happening in the dynamics of these firehouses, we can look at certain counties and see the nightmare that exists between volunteer and career relationships or whatever else. We don't want that in Carroll County. We want a collaborative environment here that's run smoothly, and part of that is the supervisorial piece and making sure that those expectations are consistently met and held. So with that said, is we don't want to see a scenario where, we are concerned about millions of dollars now in a certain sense, but then have a cascading effect of a lawsuit. So where issues that happen, or failures to provide services in effective ways or safe ways that happen because of a lack of supervision, and failures that kind of build off of, that kind of scenario. But, I think the second quote I'm going to use is in a book, and we spoke briefly about it. I'm reading right now from Admiral McRaven, whether he's talking about leadership principles or integrity or any of the intricacies of that, the overarching, I guess, thing he comes back to, the theme he comes back to is doing the right thing. And I think that, unfortunately, we can offer the requirements up as much as we want. I think what we're also looking for you is to make the hard decisions on your side on funding and facilitation on that, and do the right thing to help provide these services and meet the requirements that we're identifying too. I think it's, it is a give and take. There's a lot of things that we are going to have to talk about, and what supplanting needs to take place, or what kind of compromise needs to take place. But also there's going to be certain requirements that are non-negotiable to a certain degree, because they are what they are.
And we haven't got to that point yet where we're identifying those requirements.
Well,
yet.
I can guarantee you sometime during the end of the budget, we're going to make a call and say, are you available? Okay.
Always available.
We're $1 million short. Which piece is most important to you? And in private industry, I was asked that every day.
Sure.
And I knew I'd rather have an answer than let some idiot like me decide, So that's what I'm saying, I guess. And who knows? Maybe we'll have way too much money, but it's been tight, and it looks tight in the future. It's tough, and like I say, we wouldn't all be sitting here for an hour and a half if we didn't think this was important. Mm-hmm. And I'm trying to emphasize, we need your guys' opinion, and it's not a bottomless bucket.
And I think that was very well said, and what you said, doing what's right, that's integrity, and I believe we have it in establishing the budget. And by having that integrity, it's ensuring we get the voice and understanding from our chief and you collectively to figuring out what's right. So, and we'll leave it at that, I believe. But
I want to introduce Blaine Young, who just came into the room. He's one of our other citizen reps to ESAC. So
okay.
Thanks for joining us. Yeah.
Well, we said the last person in says a joke or dance. Seriously,
I didn't come prepared, but that's pretty good.
You can come right in the middle and do what you want.
I'll do a little dance real quick.
Do a little jig. I apologize, Commissioner Goering.
That's all right. No, I wanted to welcome Mr. Wright in here. So just a comment and then a question to go back to something you said. But again, that's why oftentimes in government, you're having conversations about things too late. The conversation we're having about where we want to go, 84 people cost a lot of money. It's the end of October. So not to put too much pressure on this committee or the board itself, but we really need, I would encourage that group and all of you to take a very open-minded approach to taking it to where we've been and where we need to go. Don't feel constrained by what's in the past. We really need you to say, we need these, we need this, we need that, and yes, there may be trade-offs, there always are, but I don't think it's too late to have that conversation. I am very concerned, as a lot of us are, that we find the people we need to fill these positions, but, you know, my analogy that I've used before is before you put an army on the battlefield, you better have enough generals and colonels and sergeants and lieutenants to run the operations, or we all know what's going to happen. So I don't think this conversation is too late, but I think it's incredibly important and wise that we're having it, and I would encourage the board and that group to not feel constrained at all. Take a look at the chess pieces, where we can cover things. It's going to be geography, it's going to be a lot of different dynamics. I want to go back to something you did say, though. You mentioned the other 7 stations and the issue of hiring people. Can you describe that situation a little bit more? And maybe this is something for Ms. Mott, but, you know, were we talking about volunteers? We're talking about paid volunteers? How acute is that situation in these other 7 stations?
So you want to take that?
No, go ahead,
I'm sorry? Can you take that?
Oh, I can, I thought you asked, okay. So right now, there is difficulty because some of the DFEMS employees came from those stations. So the stations that had
Yeah, we knew that
employees,
was, yeah.
they got pulled. So that kind of put holes. Volunteers are pitching in, and they are bringing more people in from other counties and trying to supplement that staffing. But that's primarily where the holes came from. But we were aware of that, and we knew that. CC Visa had set up a way that you could sort of reach out to, you know, if you have this person, can we blend, can we play?
Yeah, I thought
can we
that
do
was very
whatever?
good that you did that. I remember you discussing that.
It seemed to work, but we are, I mean, as more employees are pulled to DFEMS, we're still, as you called it, I think someone said, the chess positions are moving around, and we're having to make it work. And as Rick alluded to earlier, unfortunately, volunteerism is going down dramatically, not just in the fire service, but just in general, all over the world. We can blame it on COVID, but it is a struggle. There is, at my particular home station, there is it's sort of a joke, but it's not a joke, that if you get a fire call after midnight, it's the over 50 crew that goes out. And I mean that by age. And we're really struggling to pull. Director Robinson is working with CC Visa to encourage the EST program, because that way we can bring volunteers and potentially employees for him, so that we can bring that in. We're working with MSFA has given us a grant so that we can do some more marketing to bring the middle schoolers to the high schoolers. For a long time, we thought it was the high schoolers, but actually, these days you have to get them in middle school because they've already made their decisions by the time they get to high school. So we're sort of moving in that direction. So I've sort of elaborated more
No,
than I
thank you
needed
very
to,
much.
I'm sorry.
Are volunteers leaving the county at all, or they're I know they move around a lot. I was shocked by that, but they move around within the county. Are we losing them, or we're only losing them when you hire them?
I don't understand what you mean, are they moving around? Moving around from station to station, or?
Yeah.
Volunteers?
I think you mean leaving.
Well, I know they
volunteering in
move
Carrollton.
station to station. I talked to them, but do you see any saying, you know, well, I live in Mount Airy, I'm going to Howard County, I'm going to Montgomery,
To
I'm going
volunteer.
to volunteer, not to paid, or the volunteers pretty
No,
loyal?
they're just going to those counties for jobs.
Yeah.
Job
Yeah,
specific.
they're
losing
going
for
there to
jobs.
work.
Okay.
And
The,
then we might, and I would say, there's a slight chance we might get them to come back into the county to volunteer.
Just those who know me, I'm not as complimentary, especially to Commissioner Garin, or appreciative, but what he said really does matter. And I 100% agree in the sense that focus on the requirements. Don't focus on the dollars.
That's one
In
of the
the
things.
military,
Doesn't go away.
we have it starts with a mission. Mission needs statement, and then from that is an operational requirements document. Focus on that operational requirements document. You already know your mission needs statement. You already have that embedded in what you do. What we need now is that operational requirements document. You know, if there's a capital requirements, that's different. But I'm talking about operational requirements, and let us then determine, you know, with you, the price tags and what we can and cannot accomplish. And I think that's where Commissioner Guerin, you know, was spot on, is we got to be very clear as you're moving forward, and don't wait for that 95% solution. I'll take 60% now and 75% later and keep moving forward. But we need something to start working on, because this process is moving, and yeah, I just cannot emphasize that enough, and I appreciate Commissioner Guerin bringing that up, so.
Okay. Doc Murphy, you had a comment you want to make?
President Rothstein answered my question that his commissioners are laser focused as a priority on these jobs. I wanted to know where the priority was, so I'm satisfied with that.
I'm here for you.
And, you'll be hearing from me. Thank you. That's not my statement, but that was my question.
Okay. Lennis, you're one of the stations that still paying part-time people, and how hard is it for you to find
We
people
are,
to work?
and I don't know if I don't know if Commissioner Guerin got an adequate response, but the vulnerability is that, and we've repeated it a million times, is we have no mechanism to fill vacancies. There's just no mechanism in place. Chief Robinson has a mechanism in place where if somebody calls out, if it's sick, overtime, we don't have that mechanism. So anytime someone calls out for any reason, sick, their employer, our communities are left unserved, because the volunteers are not filling those EMS roles. Whether some people are saying that or not, I can tell you that's not happening. There's not volunteers that are jumping on that ambulance and getting it out the door. So that's the vulnerability, is that these communities, these 7 communities that are left, are our rural communities. They're the last 7 for a reason, because they're on the lower end of being busy, but that doesn't lessen their importance. Those communities deserve it no less than Westminster, Mount Airy, Sykesville, and those other communities. It's not a competition. Those people deserve it at the same level that these other communities get it. So that's our vulnerabilities. We don't have that. We don't have that safety mechanism. And for us especially, and I bring this up for my region, is that we're blessed to be in the Baltimore metro region, but there's parts of our county that border on very resource poor jurisdictions, meaning when we can't get out, who else is coming? You know, and in the southern part of the county and the western part of the county, there are robust infrastructure there there's our career fire departments that will help backfill our needs. That doesn't exist along that border of Baltimore County and along the Pennsylvania line. There are no resources coming, you know, south and over from Baltimore County. Even though Baltimore County is a robust system, that piece of Baltimore County has the 2 closest ambulances are volunteer ambulances that they're rarely fully staffed. So we have that stressor that affects that entire region, the entire Pennsylvania line and Baltimore County, bordered by resource poor. And no slight to them. They're trying their best to manage an EMS system that's in shambles, you know, nationwide. So that kind of explains.
Are you meeting your requirements based on vulnerabilities and the risks associated with the 14 stations, or are you meeting your requirements on the beginning math that we did as far as stations? I mean, have you adjusted because of, you know, identified vulnerabilities or risks in stations?
And he brings up a great point. So Lineborough, for example, we put one of our 3 chase cars at Manchester, because currently Lineborough and Hampstead, either side of them, are staffed by volunteer corporate employees. So to handle the contingencies on those days, having that one paramedic in that chase car can immediately get over there, and we can wait for a transport unit. The criticality is to get paramedics on the scene within 10 minutes or less to focus on the national standards. So as long as we can maintain that, then we're going to have good outcomes, because when you alert a station and there is no ambulance there, and we call it a first responder call, typically they will have people that will come and they'll get out one of their other vehicles, which carry oxygen, basic EMS supplies, and can stabilize till we get enough resources there. The challenge is, as the availability of the volunteer resources go down, is it becomes more of a hit or miss situation. So we have to assure the continuity that someone is coming from a reasonable distance to meet those thresholds and the vulnerabilities that are out there.
And it's gotta be tough on the perimeters. You may have less calls, but each call's just as important whenever it
Just as
happens.
important, and there's a lot less abuse there too. People that live out where we live, they don't call for an ambulance because, their stomach's been hurting for a month. They call for it because they absolutely need to go to the hospital. There's very little abuse of the system. There's some, I'm not gonna be naive, but there's very little abuse of the system. When someone calls for an ambulance in our rural areas, they absolutely need to go and be seen at a hospital. So we kind of balance that as well. And we have they tend to be much sicker by the time they call as well.
Yeah,
So
I have a friend in Montgomery County system, and some of his calls,
it's ridiculous. Yeah.
Yeah. You got their bag packed waiting for you.
My foot's hurt for a week. Please rush me to the hospital. Okay.
Okay.
So one of the other things that we talked about that, and again, this is a good news story, I think, where we talk about how the county has evolved in its hiring practices too, or changes that they're making. I think we all think it was a great move when the chief told us last week when we had ESAC that, there's going to be an open season for firefighter, paramedic, and paramedic hiring. That's great to hear, especially with the competition that we're going to be facing here with other jurisdictions. And we are all naive to think that we aren't going to lose people, to go do other jobs, because this is a job just like anybody else is applying for a job. If they can find something better on the other side, then they're going to jump for it. It's just going to be a constant thing that we'll have to be dealing with. So the more we can be creative in hiring, the better off I think we will be here in the county. If that means changing some things, does that means that, hey, maybe we need to call some people up and just say, hey, do you realize that you forgot to include this? Maybe we need to start doing that. And I know that's more time intensive, and I know that's somebody that has to do that. But in this environment, with what we have currently today, I think we might have to start reaching out a little bit more and doing some of those things.
Can I ask, I know we talked about mutual aid and these other things, but so I know we will lose people to other counties, but I would imagine there are some people who come to our county from elsewhere. And have we ever asked them what made you decide that we were better to come work for than, say, Baltimore County or Frederick County? I mean, what is it that's drawing people to Carroll?
It's our schedule. 24 hours on, 72 hours off equates to a 42-hour work week. In Frederick, they work one day, they're only off for 48 hours. We give you an extra day off. And so when you work that out at an hourly rate, we're actually equivalent in pay. And then the opportunities also exist if you have 3 days off, depending on who you are and what your priorities are in life. We have a lot of people that are working a lot of overtime. And in fact, that's something we have to watch as we have vacancies, because it's going to hit a threshold, and people are going to start asking questions about the overtime when they see what it is. And right now, it's purely a situation where we're paying a lot of overtime to fill these spots. The other thing that I want to mention is we're at minimal staffing every day. And what that means is we have no latitude. Now we've got 15 floaters in place. But prior to that, we had no latitude. One person takes off, we're understaffed. So for example, in the last 2 weeks, we had one day where we had 6 mandatory holdovers. And what that means is that someone worked a 24-hour shift, and say they're a paramedic firefighter in Westminster, they may have run 24 calls, and their number comes up. We do it by the computer selects you, and your number came up. So even though you're exhausted, you work those calls, you're not going home in the morning, you're staying here for 24 hours. And by the way, it's your son's first birthday party. Well, your number came up, you're not going to that party. And those kind of things are going to be game changers for people if they occur too much. So our objective has been is continuous recruitment, and now we have the ability to do some continuous hiring. That's going to resolve a lot of that. One of the things that we're working with HR on is we've had a lot of people that we've excluded for various reasons, but probably the number one reason is they don't understand our credentialing process. And unlike other jurisdictions, we're not running an academy because it's not cost effective at this point in our evolution. So we're hiring people that are pre-qualified. There's a whole lot of those out there. We've gotten a lot of paramedics from Pennsylvania. But the challenge is we've got someone that hits A through G, but they didn't hit H, and they're eliminated, and now they got to wait 6 months. And in that 6 months, where do they go to? Oh, gee, Montgomery County had 100 vacancies, and that person that was all prepared to come here, now I'll be careful because we have a lieutenant from Montgomery County here on the board, but they've gone to Montgomery County, who receives them with open arms, and even though it's not the optimal schedule, there's all those dynamics. So we have to be sure, and for all the issues that we had when we began this with HR, they no longer exist. We've got a full-time HR person. They work for HR, but they're assigned to us, and we've overcome those, but we still have some areas that we've got to go even deeper with, especially when we're looking to fill 84 positions.
And so, Mr. Baker, does that kind of go to the point that you had made about if somebody, for example, submits an application where they forgot to fill something out, then somebody would be in touch with them, rather than saying, we're eliminating you because you didn't fill out the application?
We ought to be calling up and say, hey, you forgot to upload your driver's license.
Now, how often does that occur, that somebody forgets to fill out part of an application or misses something in the
Fairly
process?
frequently.
And are all those people automatically excluded from the hiring process
Well,
at that
we
point?
try to tell them that you need to look over your application, but we're not able to tell them and say, hey, you submitted a card that you took a class, but you didn't submit a certification. So what's complicated in Maryland is we provide you with classes, say, to be a firefighter 1. So you take that whole class for 120 some odd hours, and you get a card that says you passed all the exams, but we have a separate certification system where you have to take that card and a couple other prerequisites and convert that to a certificate. It's kind of like an attorney goes to law school, they're given a Juris Doctor degree, but they haven't passed the bar yet. But they are an attorney, they may, and there's a lot of those that never take the bar, but until they take the bar, they're not really an attorney. They have a law degree. So that's probably the best analogy that we could have for something like that. So we have a lot of those people that have completed the courses, but they haven't gone out and gotten the certification, and we have an easy way to do that, but we've got to tell them, or have the ability to tell them, without violating all these other policies, to tell them, hey, you've got to go, and it's simple enough. We're working right now with the State Fire Service Personnel Qualifications Board, where Carroll County is going to become a certifying body, meaning that the person doesn't have to go down to the University of Maryland. We'll be able to do all that right here. So we're in that process now that's going to make things easier for us. And we've brought in and I happen to have that hat where I'm the chair of that board, so I've brought in my full-time staff to sit here and get people certified. We had 2 people show up. So part of it is our marketing of that and the lack of understanding from the candidates, but as that pool shrinks to the same group of people for maybe 10 or 14 jurisdictions, we have to be doing our due diligence in the application process to assure that we can pick up those people.
So, I apologize.
I just want to, you asked a pointed question as to what is it that brings people here.
Yes, sir.
And I think I want to just latch on to what the chief said. The schedule absolutely is attracting, but Chief Robinson, are you at full state? Do you have all the medics that you need to fill positions currently?
Have what?
All the medics. Have you filled all your paramedic positions here in the county, the ones that are vacant? I think that's, we haven't talked about this much, but I think we need to look at that as a victory, is that there's nobody sitting here at the table that thought that that was possible. And there is a why to that, and I'm not exactly sure what it is yet. And part of me believes is that the way this county is approaching creating this public safety agency is, I think, the way is enviable to all these great big jurisdictions. Surrounding us are these great big storied, historic jurisdictions that had these beautiful fire departments that now have an EMS problem. And they've just done everything in their power just to keep up. All their resources are going to where the demand is. Where we, in this county, are focusing on where the problem is, and that's maintaining that emergency medical services. We're actually attacking this in what I believe is the right way. We're going where the need is the most, and then we'll slowly build out a department from that. But I think that having the paramedics we need, that is a victory for us, because none of us would have believed that there were enough paramedics in this state or anywhere to fill those positions. And so there is a why to that. And then the analogy I use is that we're getting people from other jurisdictions because they're so strained, it's become a soul-crushing profession. We want to be paramedics. We want to take care of sick people, and I'm just using paramedics. That's the most difficult position to fill. It's become soul-crushing. We no longer enjoy doing our job because we're running thousands of calls a year, and there is no satisfaction in that job. We're offering them something where they can continue to do what they love to do, but not at a soul-crushing rate. Yeah. So there are some wins here for us. I think we got to.
And he kind of asked half my question, and you two kind of semi-answered it, but I thought early on the schedule, the shifts, was what was going to attract people here. And so I know you're not real far in, but this far in, is that working? Is it still attracting? Are people happy? And operation-wise, does it work okay? Does it increase over time or help over time, or it's kind of neutral?
Well, what it does for a lot of our employees have a second career somewhere else, and it's not up for us to determine, but I'll use a lot of the people we've probably hired. I would say we're up to probably about 30 people that came from Pennsylvania down here. And they came here because none of the other fire departments, with the exception of Baltimore County and Baltimore City, offer paramedics a job as a paramedic within a fire department without having to be a firefighter. So that's attracting people initially. However, we have to pay close attention to that with retention, because if we offer nothing else in a short period of time, 5 years or 10 years, we'll have all paramedics and none of them will be qualified to fight fires, and it's still a very big component of what we do when there is a fire. Westminster is probably our best example. We've got a lieutenant and a driver on an engine. That engine goes out the door, the paramedic ambulance follows them, and our expectation is that at least the firefighter EMT can make them a 3-person crew, and if the paramedic is not a firefighter, they're going to be setting up to do medical things. In a lot of cases, we have paramedics that are also firefighters, and the fact that they go on fires, believe it or not, gives them some relief from running all those medical calls. So Westminster gets a real fire, that gives them 2 to 3 hours off the line of running probably 5 or 6 nursing home calls, and that's what keeps them whole. So one of the things we have to look at in retention, it's not all about the money, and it's not all about all the other benefits, but it's what it is they're going to do, and to make their jobs variable where they're using their skill sets. Where they're going on different calls. Because if you look at the more urbanized areas of the county, there's a lot of undesirable calls. And that's just consistent with the socioeconomic factors that exist in those particular municipalities, and places like the Sykesville Freedom District, where there's a significant number of retirees and independent living and all those other things. And while our people do a great job when they run to that, they're just looking for the ability to have things. So moving forward, we're going to have to assure that there are other avenues for people. The other thing is, one person gets injured or someone gets pregnant, we may lose that person for a period of time, so we're not going to just put them off. We have to have modified duty positions, which we have created within to handle a lot of those administrative things, and those are some of the alternatives we look at. But we can't build a position around someone becoming injured. So there's just a lot of dynamics, and as we grow, we're gonna find out things that we're not even looking at right now.
Well, I think one of the other reasons why people want to come to work here, they don't have to do CPAP.
Yeah, and what that is there's a national standard physical ability test that was done by the International Association of Fire Chiefs and the union, the IAFF, and lots of people that all they want to do is ride in a paramedic unit get eliminated because of that testing. We did what I'll call adaptive testing, is we got permission actually from Baltimore County, a test that I helped develop probably 25 years ago for EMS-only people. And it's more user-friendly, specific to the position, it's been validated, and because they don't have to do the CPAT, which is what eliminates lots of people from the other departments, we're able to bring them in.
And all of our surrounding jurisdictions do have requirement for CPAT.
It's CPAT only,
Right.
and that becomes a big issue.
And that kicks a lot of people out.
And so,
Right
Chief
off the bat.
Robinson, the point that you gentlemen made about the elimination of people based on like an incomplete application, to change that, what would that require? Is it a policy change from us? Is that a policy change from, what
Well,
would
we
have to
could do
happen
that, we
to-
can work that out with HR. It's, we don't need to, it's just a simple,
Because if it's something that's not, central to the job, that's going to determine, I don't know, like I forgot to fill out that I have a criminal record or something, right? I mean, if it's something incidental that's not going to go to the heart of doing the job, then I don't think that should preclude somebody from being able to do the job.
right.
Commissioner Vigliotti, I appreciate you.
Well, that
Maybe you don't want a firefighter or an EMT working on you.
not something like that, but I'm sorry. Ms.
And we
Rock.
can make the argument that, well, do you really want someone that doesn't know where their driver's license is? Well, we can make all those arguments, but the reality is we're in a crisis. It doesn't mean we lower our standards,
Right.
but it may mean, and there's some generational issues that we all see every day, and because of that, maybe we need to just be a little bit more friendlier in the process is probably the best way to look at it.
And let me clarify for the record, I was not suggesting forgetting to fill out something about a criminal record is acceptable.
Right, and that will take care of itself with our background checks.
So, no.
I'd like to, go ahead.
So Commissioner Vigliotti, I appreciate you bringing that up. We have made adjustments to the hiring processes as we've gone along, and I think it's been the right thing to do. So I don't know if it's something we have to agree to now. I'd rather do that, but I can wait till next Thursday. But if somebody's been administratively disqualified, I think it's important for us to take a look at that process. I would ask the staff and HR to go back and modify that, given the light of what the situations we're in. So those people, again, who have been administratively disqualified, maybe it's paperwork or something like that, that they get a second look.
And Ms. Mott, I think you said you wanted
I
to.
wanted to share that Director Robinson actually took the time to have pre-classes for people for their applications, and he went over the application and what was required. So, I mean, I think he's gone through the extra steps to bring them in, but I don't disagree with you that the ones that have made simple glitches,
It's just human nature.
it's human nature, and I think we can, I don't want to say excuse it, but I think we could modify, but I do want to make sure that you understand that Director Robinson has made the attempts to make it easier and simpler for these people.
I mean, I'm good with that as long as we don't lessen the standards.
Right.
Yep.
And I don't think it's changing the standards necessarily, just the process. And, I think adaption and all that is important, is going to be key to our success. I do want to offer kind of, perspective, because we are looking at 84 positions plus wherever the number lands in the end. And we are unique comparatively to the other jurisdictions that surround us in that we are solely hiring previously trained people. So whereas those people are also in the process looking for other jobs in other jurisdictions, and so we continually are competitive with them. They're already, it's a smaller pool because we are looking for those people with those specific certifications. Also, it kind of blends the retention and recruitment conversation together. Because one of the things that I'm seeing very consistently is when I go have the broader conversation with the other locals in the other jurisdictions, is they are very in tune with what's happening with us here. So one of the main questions that comes up on a regular basis is, where are your pay scales? That's a common expectation for this line of work. We don't have them. There's no expectation. And I think that, we have to look at what are fire department practices that are not, I guess, already established in Carroll County. Understand that the fire culture and the people that we are trying to attract with the previous experience and with that training do have prior expectations of how the fire service exists, and that culture should exist. You know, and they look for a healthy culture. If we aren't doing the things to, I guess, maintain a healthy culture, to build a healthy culture, and then have that word spread, we're going to also run the wells dry on the people willing to come here. Because I think it's important perspective here, and there's a lot of variables in here. It's, you know, maybe our recruitment practices are one of them, but you know, we were trying to hire 30-something positions to fill all the floats up. We were short 9 positions, I believe it was, or something of the sort, on this last hiring class, and it was a small class. It was only 28 people, and we couldn't fill past 28 people. We're looking at 84 plus positions for next summer, and we're already having a hard time. So it's a holistic conversation of what are our recruitment practices, but then also what is the culture and what are the things that we're going to do as a department to make us the department where people want to come to and then stay, because they are talking. And every little injury and every little drama, it's being talked about, period. And then if it gets in the news, it's even worse. So we're already taking licks, and we have some battle scars already from some things that have happened since January. We want to limit that, and we need to do the right things. Do the right thing for the people, but also for the people we want to recruit.
Why don't we piggyback off of some academies in the state?
Why don't we piggyback?
And use the academies in the state?
I can help with that one. We do that at the airport,
Yeah.
and what ends up happening is that it doesn't come without cost, because you're still paying their salary, obviously,
Right.
but they're not going to do it without our participation. So
Right.
whenever, use my jurisdiction as an
Yeah.
example, we assign personnel to go to that. So it's
Right.
basically an employee that has to be reporting there 5 days a week to assist with that in their cadre, because technically they can't be reprimanded, by another jurisdiction. So there has to be supervision for those employees at a remote academy. So we do that
Yeah.
with some regularity.
No, I appreciate
It's a good
that. I
idea.
mean,
It is a good idea, but
I-
it comes with a cost.
yeah, and I would expect it would as well. I mean, you look at the police academy up in North Carroll, and you have multiple jurisdictions going through their academy. It does come with a cost, and I would expect that. Maybe a long-term vision
Yep,
is,
and we will get to the point when we've caught up to our positions where we may be able to hire people off the street and have an academy. And I spent, the challenge with an academy is for us to go to other academies, they use this national CPAT test as their standard. So that would be number one. The other thing is, there's about a 20% loss of people, so we would hire people, they would be out of the academy, and then when they're done the academy, they come out as firefighter EMTs, and for them to become paramedics at that point, it's another 2 years.
I'd rather have a firefighter EMT than nobody at all.
Yeah, but we have to look at moving forward, we will come to the point where we have recruited all that we can recruit from the pool that's out there, and unless we do, as Lieutenant Karolenko referred to, do things and our internal issues. Maryland's a small state, but there's 35,000 fire people, career and volunteer, and things spread like wildfire. So something happens here before I know about it, there's probably somebody east, west, north, or south that knows exactly what's happening. And so we absolutely have to look at those dynamics.
Talk about anything?
I was just going to say
Yeah.
that probably is a benefit for us. I mean, my current assignment is at the Montgomery County Training Center. It's 26 weeks to take somebody from zero training to finish, so that's 6 months. And as much as, we talk about budgets, the operational costs, you're paying 6 instructors at our, sometimes lieutenants, captains, or battalion chiefs, a lot of money for 10 to 12 hours a day to train these recruits in the back end, not to mention equipment, gear, everything else. They have 2 sets of gear, one for training, one for actually burning. And I think that's a benefit to us, is that the ability that you're able to get somebody who comes off of a retirement of 20 years from like Montgomery or Frederick or somewhere else, where they are fully trained, they have that institutional knowledge, which helps us, right? Because we see when we bring in people that we call them pop-out classes, previously trained, some people develop bad habits, right? And it's hard to break those. So for some places that have a well-established program,
Yeah.
it is good to have somebody fresh. At the same time, when we're trying to get a jump start like this, I think that's what makes us attractive. That ability for people who don't want to go through that, and that's what also sometimes attracts people that have previous experiences. We call them these reduced academy classes, or little time, because it is a paramilitary organization, right? You are committed from 7 a.m. till 5 p.m. Monday through Friday, and that is your life for 6+ months. And that is something that I think is a benefit while we're getting people. I mean, I know people who work at my firehouse at Company 9 Reese. We have a captain who is retired from Baltimore County with 30+ years, who's now a driver. He calls himself a rookie, but that guy has more institutional knowledge than I do, So I think that's a benefit for us, and that's why we're able to maintain where we are, but and use that right now. But I think eventually, like the chief said, there is going to be the Carroll County way of training people. It's just a matter of time.
No, I appreciate it, and we're covering a lot on the agenda, and we're bouncing back and forth for the next, 15 minutes or so. What are the, I think, structured do-outs that you want to bring to our attention?
Rick, can I just start with what's in my head right now?
Absolutely.
We didn't spend much time talking about revenue. We talked about needs once, but we understand there's a revenue piece to this where you guys are going to be struggling. We've heard there's been pushback to safer grants, and it's a head scratcher for us because we don't understand, and I'm not going to call it free money because nothing's free, but it basically is grants from the federal government that help lessen the blow. It is money that's put in your pockets for staffing, and there's been pushback on that, and that's been a head scratcher for us because I think, and this is near and dear to John's heart, is the revenue. This is a have to. Everything we're talking about is a have to. It's eventually going to be what it is, but a safer grant gets us, it softens the blow by just kicking the can down the road. It does, but it allows the conversation to not be hurried, and we have to make, it allows next year to be a little less painful to move forward and meet what we say is our minimum.
If
So
you receive the safer grant.
if we receive it, it's always that is correct, but we're all very confident that a fledgling fire, historically, brand-new fire departments are at the very top of the list when it comes to safer grants, because that's their intention, is to build public safety agencies. And we really, I think we collectively scratch our head when there's pushback to even considering putting in for that. It doesn't have to be for, massive amounts of money. It could just be to help get us to our budget numbers, but, something to get us to this 84, that is a reasonable thing to get us to 84, which we've already said is the basement. That's the red line. We need to get these 84 positions to be at our starting.
What's the pushback for getting a
We've
grant?
heard,
Okay, so it's on us. Your comments, they resonate.
Yeah.
And, it's ensuring that we are prepared to submit a safer grant with the expectation that it will get approved.
Right.
And at this point, right now, the expectation is it would not be approved right now. It doesn't mean that it's not going to happen in the near future, or we're not going to look for submitting a safer grant. But the focus, being on EMS and being on one side of this, the safer grant is on the other side.
Right.
And, so our team, our staff has looked at this, saying, we understand, and we're definitely not against it. I love free money. We're not against it.
which isn't
It's
free.
just- It's just getting ourselves in a position, so when we do submit, there's that very high expectation that we would receive.
We are not trying to hire anybody different than what any of our neighboring jurisdictions are hiring right now.
Right.
They're hiring firefighter EMTs and firefighter paramedics off of safer grants.
And drivers, 2/3 of what we're trying to hire.
So yeah, I feel compelled to, this has just happened in the past week or so, but my understanding with the staff is that we are taking a look at safer grants right now because we are hiring firefighters for FY 25. And the last conversations I had, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but that's something we've had the conversations, Ms. Wyndham. I mean,
We've looked at it each year, and we will look at it this year as well, yes.
Yeah.
It's good to hear, because it's,
No, absolutely, yeah, we're definitely not, we're not shoving it into the corner. And it was highlighted, Commissioner Guerin did highlight it back onto the table, and, for all the right reasons. It's out there now, so we're working through it. We being our team, Mr. Zaleski, trying to get all the numbers together and that kind of good stuff, but.
And we recognize it's going to be a team effort because you are involving federally elected officials at that point, and I watched intently what, Frederick went through and how involved that became. So as we move down the road and take a look at that, if it looks like it's going to be something we can do, and I happen to believe it is, and then this board, you'll see us start making phone calls and doing what we have to do to people.
Rick, did you want to handle the last couple?
Yeah.
On the agenda?
Yeah. If I could, I just want to talk on a couple additional things here. One of the biggest policies that we went through and approved it through ESAC was this, that got approval unanimously by the 14 fire chiefs in the county as well as by ESAC, was this equipment replacement policy. We had an exercise that we went through that we got 2 requests back in the beginning of October. We talked about them at 18 when we met last week. Tawnytown and Gamber are purchasing a new aerial device and as well as a new tanker. We're talking well over $2 million worth of equipment here. Now, the good news story here is that Tawnytown wants to replace their aerial device it's 23 years old, with a newer one. Gamber wants to replace their engine tanker. When I say an engine tanker, it's a dual-use piece. It carries hose, it carries water, it carries a pump and a tank, a very big tank. But they want to replace it and the primary function of it is to carry water to a fire. They want to replace it with a piece of equipment, with a tanker that is just that, a tanker. It doesn't have all the tack lines, it doesn't have all the supply lines. It'll show up now with, 1,600 gallon more of water?
Yeah, it's going from 2,000 to 3,500, 3,600, 3,500 gallons, which is huge.
And you can operate it with one person. So, and it's going to cost less money than an engine tanker will. So we're getting a piece of equipment that's going to cost less, going to require less manpower, and you're going to get more water to the fire. So those 2 things were approved, and the chief approved them and sent the letters out yesterday to those departments. The process worked well. Now, when we start talking about adding a new service to some station that hasn't had that capability before, that might be a little bit more involved, where we're going to pull the data analyst in, and I can't wait for that person to get hired, so that we can start making some, educated decisions. So that, I just wanted to tell you, was another good news story that we're doing, and I think it went well. Lennis, did you have anything to add to that?
No, that was perfect.
Okay. Updates to the strategic plan, we've alluded to it, but we've got a group of folks that are going to start looking at some future staffing things. Chief Rook from Sykesville is going to be leading that group that contains both career and volunteer people on that group. As well as that it will have the data analyst on it once we get that person hired on too, that will help provide information to those.
Well, I appreciate it. Keep him busy and away from me. I like that.
There you go. So, I've asked for them to come back with an initial report in December. When we have that information, we'll pass it to the chief, and we'll get you guys that information as well. And as well as, again, I want to come back again in February to give us another update. All right, so again, keeping in mind, I know it's in the middle of budget season, but it's going to be you'll have some more information before you really get deep into it in the spring. Yes, sir.
You mentioned revenues. How is the billing, and is that all still a work in progress, trying to pull things together? Is that what you thought it was, or
There's
needs a lot of
3
work?
primary approvals. There's Medicare, Medicaid, which is state medical assistance, and then there's the VA. And the private insurance is basically there already. So we've got all 4 of them on there. We hired 2 very dynamic billing people. They hit the ground running. They've got their credentials. They're doing good things already. One of them's in Disney World for 2 weeks, but the other one just went and got the HIPAA credentials so she can now be an official HIPAA manager. There's just a lot of moving parts. As an example, in September, the company gives us all kinds of very detailed reports that we're going to connect our data analysts with. So in September, we did billing of $1.6 million for 1 month. Now that is only from 6 companies. We don't even have everybody on board. We will have all 13 companies that transport once we get to the point where all the companies are on board, which will be in July. So
Are they all pretty cooperative? The people I talked
yeah, well,
to couldn't wait till you
yes,
get
we are
this
handling
going.
a lot of phone calls, and our billing people are very customer focused. They're handling
lot of
them.
work.
We had one gentleman last week called us back 3 times, and what I explained to him, and in a positive way, I put the commissioners in that whole loop, and what I told them was that the commissioners understand that people are going to say they pay taxes, and so we're doing soft billing, which is if you have the insurance, we'll take your insurance, and after 2 attempts, there's going to be no out-of-pocket money. So people that are asking the questions are very grateful. There's a lot of them that aren't asking the questions. They're submitting it to their insurance, and the money is coming in. Now, we are doing the billing for 3 of our volunteer companies right now. So the billing, we're still managing the billing. The comptroller does a balance transfer into their accounts that they get with their county funding already. So there's a lot of moving parts in it, and these 2 folks that we hired have been tremendous, and we look for it to improve. Now, when I say $1.6 million, doesn't mean that money came into the account. It says that's what we've billed for.
Yes.
So even if we're up to 75 to 80% of that over the aggregate of the annual calendar year's collections, we should do very well. And then after a year's worth of data, we'll be available or eligible for the Medicaid supplement that's paid through the CMS at the federal level, which I'll give you an example. Baltimore City last year, of course, they got a lot of Medicaid recipients, $110 million. That was their revenue they got out of that program. Frederick County got about between $6 and $8 million. So ultimately, we estimate that we might get anywhere from $3 to $5 million in supplemental funding. So, and the other big part of that is, as everybody knows, is all that has to go back into the system. It theoretically doesn't go in, well, it may go into the general fund, but it has to go back into the system. So that may be some relief in terms of other areas that we're going to and things we're looking at.
So, going back, scheduling, I think February is fine. I don't think it's too late. I think there's a lot of homework that needs to be done between now and then. You know, I think, again, focusing from where Commissioner Guerin was focused, requirements. Get it laid out and get it very clear. The clearer you are, the better we are in pricing and understanding the operational costs, you know, in doing that.
So would you like to get together again at the end of January, beginning of February?
Yeah, February,
Okay.
early February, I think
Okay.
should work. And I mean, because, I mean, we're going into November and everybody knows.
Yep.
Mid-November to early January, it's dead, and it's gonna be very difficult.
Yep.
But, okay.
And I
Appreciate
think,
time, I appreciate it.
well, I was gonna say, if something comes up that's important
Oh,
prior to
absolutely.
that, yeah,
Absolutely.
holler.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Doc Murphy, you had a comment?
With your permission, Mr. President, I'm one of the citizen representatives
Yes, sir.
of the 11. And I just want to read our charge. Primary residents of Carroll County, all appointees shall not have an affiliation with any fire, rescue, and EMS service in any way, except providing a coconut cake once in a while from Lineburg, I don't. So that they may purely represent the consumer's perspective.
Yep.
And there are 3 of us. When I was first approached about this, I had some fear in my heart because I've been to all 24 subdivisions of this state, 23 of which has the same problems. And the Maryland State Farms Association for 30 or 40 years has been working on recruitment and retention. Very difficult. It's not happening. So I thought, man, I've been doing this a lot of years. I'll tell you how many years, but I don't want Chief Robinson to find out how old I am.
There you go.
But it is a tough nut.
Yep.
In this book, I must say, your remarks have allayed my fears a great deal, that this is a focus. I'll tell you why I appreciate it. In this book, they talk about 14 districts. They're not districts, they're communities. They're communities of people.
That's right.
The Civil War went through Westminster. I don't know what the hell went through Union Bridge or whatever, but these are communities that banded together. And while there's a lot of money talked about here, the volunteers bore this long before we ever got here. They had suppers and dinners and bingos and hay rides and stuff like that. When I was born, there was 35,000 people in Carroll County. When I got out of the Army, and yes, Chief, it was the American Army, there were 45,000 people here.
Yep.
Now there's 175,000 people.
Yep.
The dynamic has changed. Fires are down, buildings are built better, but they're more complicated. But the EMS calls have gone up. And believe you me, from the citizen's perspective, there's nothing better than to know that you have that ability to call. Nobody wants to get cancer. They say, oh, I'm glad I have cancer because I have insurance. They don't say that.
Right.
They have insurance because in case.
Right.
And this is what this is. The chief mentioned Medicare and Medicaid started in '65. It's an untapped source for the county, VA, the others. But I'm very pleased to hear your remarks and remarks of the other commissioners that we are a priority, that this program will go on, ups and downs and ins and outs. But I'm thankful to be here.
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much.
No, I appreciate it. Centers of influence and centers of the community are our schools, our churches, and our fire halls. And they should not be, pushed to the side. So I appreciate your comments.
Absolutely.
And thank you for your service.
I know you get many requests, but this is one that I think over the years is based on results.
Yep.
We know there's a direct relationship between time of response and outcome.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. A lot of people died to prove that, but it's a result. So thank you very much for your support.
Yes, sir. Any other closing comments? I think this was very fruitful. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I'd like just to thank you. I thought this was going to be part of our agenda. We talked about it at ESAC briefly.
Turning on the mic? No.
No.
Go ahead.
There's been a lot of focus on the positions, and obviously it's important. We've hashed that out numerous times. But on behalf of the corporations, we need to be mindful of the partnership we have. You just mentioned it a second ago about the fire stations. There's the MOU, there's a lot of things in the MOU that there's some question about whether they're being fulfilled. What is the process if we feel that something's not being adhered to in the MOU? And I'm pertaining to the budgets, the operating budgets that we have. There were some questions last year that really didn't get answered. What is the process when things aren't funded that we feel are supposed to be funded?
Well, I think we have great lines of communication. One, we have very competent and somewhat talkative chief. And
Take that as a compliment.
Our fire EMS.
Nobody had to tell him how to use his mic, did they?
No. So that is a path forward, because I know, and I would expect he always has an open door policy to any comment. We all, me and myself, my colleagues, have also an open door to any singular comment. Collectively, the ESAC, was established, and I think it's come a long ways as far as I won't say just its value, but it's also participation. Commissioner Garing keeps us completely up to date on his participation in the ESAC. So I think there's not just one way method, but there's multiple.
No, I think you hit the main three, but I do appreciate your comments about the value of ESAC. We know the ESAC technically is here to advise the chief.
And you guys.
But we value the ESAC's role and responsibilities and their input tremendously. So if I'm gonna give you an answer, I'm gonna repeat the same three from Commissioner Rothstein, that those are the best three avenues to go through.
Go through, I'm sorry. What's he, if he has a question that something isn't in the budget and he's not happy, who does he go to?
So, I mean, again, talk to the chief, go through ESAC, or there's always an email. But
Yep.
either way, we're gonna find out.
Individual, what I don't want to say I do not want, but I feel is not as appropriate is if there's collectively a group that wants to come to me. I'd rather have an individual come to me than a collective group. If it's a collective group, I'd rather have Chief definitely, on top of it, and me having that conversation with him along with my colleagues and our administrator. But I'm an open door, just like those to my right and left, that any individual can reach out to me any given time. But yeah, that's kind of where I stand, and
Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
Okay.
Yes, it does.
Good.
I just, and again, we understand the revenue. It's tough for everybody. But we have to maintain those stations. We were promised help with that, so.
Absolutely.
We need to make sure that happens, and just wanted to get that out.
No, and if I thought that you did not have that as your priority, I'd be pretty upset. So I am glad that collective, that is your priority. But
And it's tough, and I think this whole hybrid system, the stations still do fundraising, they still do carnivals, some do the bingo. This doesn't fund everything, and I think somehow we need to make sure the community understands that too. It's like you said about getting a bill and say, I pay taxes. Well, what I hear in Manchester, Hampstead, Lumber, well, I bought raffle tickets and donated to them, and they're sending me a bill, and somehow we got to get that message out, both sides of it.
That was one of my closing comments I wanted to make, because today's front page of the Times, right? It's got your picture on it, it's got.
Does it?
picture of-
I didn't
Oh,
even
yeah.
look at it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
But it's talking about we just hired 28 more people. And we bought equipment, and we bought vehicles, and the county did this, and the county did that. And I'm sitting there, okay, well, I just told you that here's two corporations that are gonna fund $2.5 million worth of equipment.
Yeah.
There's another one in your jurisdiction that's building a brand-new firehouse at the tune of $7 million.
I got to buy bricks or something.
Yeah. So I think we really need to continue to work on our message.
Yep.
Because I'm really worried about if I continue, somebody was to read this in the paper, here's $42 million that's earmarked. We're going to add to that by having 84 more people added to it, plus some, I'm optimistic. Then, why do I need to go buy a hamburger at this carnival? Why do I got to go to bingo? Why do I got to do that? So, and it's a two-way street. I think we collectively, the Visa and the volunteer corporations have to do a job, but I think we need to, as a county combination fire department, have to do a better job of saying, this is the things that we are paying for, and this is how this is a team effort.
and I am not dissing the newspaper, and I'm not even challenging them. That article had that in there, but it also, in addition, had on the schedule for today, all of the purchases that we're making, whether it be vehicles or whatever decisions we're gonna be making. The challenge, just like you were moving towards, it's out of context. And by itself, it's like, you're spending 3-point-some million on X. Yeah, but it's part of it's a puzzle piece that's really providing.
Public-private
all of it.
partnership. Yep.
And they were all in the budget.
So, yeah, well,
Yeah, they were all in the budget, because I'll hear, oh, you throw money at EMS and the sheriff, you throw money. Well, rarely is it not already in the budget. It's just we have to approve the purchase.
so, no, I agree. So I think you're right, messaging. continuing to share the appropriate messaging with the newspaper, if that's what they're gonna be publishing, to help put it in context. Because we're doing a lot of really, really good things. I mean, we are running generators till 40 years. You know, it's pretty impressive, the PMCS on some of this equipment that's keeping it alive for 40 years before we're doing something else. That's not the storyline. You know, the storyline is we're spending X amount on a generator. And I'm like, yeah, well, look at the rest of the story. So you're right. That's also part of the.
Should they and us work on a press release maybe for the volunteers? Is that worth doing, or?
I'm looking at our agenda from last meeting, June 13th.
Yep.
That was the last item. Marketing of the combination department. We have to get that word out.
We have to.
I think it helps both parties in educating the public. I've talked to a lot of people that think that this is fully funded by
So I
tax.
think you just tasked chief on doing something, so, okay.
We actually had a conversation
Mr.
back,
Kyler was
like
gonna
in the
do a
spring.
blog,
I'm
right?
sorry. Just to really briefly, back in the spring, we even had a conversation during this whole thing, is like even going to doing multimedia pieces and all that kind of stuff. Sure. I know it kind of met a roadblock because there were some responsibilities between different parties that, said, well, I'm actually responsible for that kind of thing. I think that there are pieces of Carroll County government system that need to come together, because we're not talking about just a career department that we need to advertise or just a volunteer. We're talking about rebranding the identity of what we are as a cohesive entity. And I think we need to hit that on all those things and bring them together as a task force to kind of hit this multimedia
So
thing.
we can establish a campaign, a communication campaign. I mean, I sit on the shock trauma board, and one of the campaigns is Stop the Bleed, okay? And it's not just a one message, but it's a campaign of all of us doing it. So this can be a campaign where we get the message out and periodically continue with that messaging on how we're growing and changing to meet the needs and safety of our community. I mean, that's what, at the end of the day, it comes down to.
I appreciate that.
She had her hand up.
Yes, I'm sorry, ma'am.
No, I was just reminding you that you said you were gonna do your podcasts and stuff.
Oh.
That was at the last.
Yeah, I have a
meeting.
podcast again this week, and last time I didn't have to say much. I could just sit and listen.
Yes, we can use, we
I
can
did do that
absolutely
with
use
you.
podcasts for messaging and for this campaign. It doesn't have to just be on a Sunday. We can bank these podcasts and get them out there appropriately. There's lots of different ways. And I'm open to, I don't want to say just but I believe we are open to different ways to message. I just don't want it to be one message and we're done,
All summer, the board talked
I was
about
gonna
all the
s-
carnivals.
The carnival.
Yeah.
Every
oh,
open
yeah,
session,
yeah.
there was.
And the
We brought it
Carroll
up.
County Times did, each company, as they had their carnival, each one of them got a front page.
Yep.
And
Okay.
One thing, I just will jump in on that for a quick second on marketing. You were talking about volunteers and the lack of, maybe not lack, but the difficulty in finding new volunteers. And I don't know, so I'm just asking the question. What about reaching out to some of the various groups in the community, be it the school system, the community college, Boys and Girls Club, those kind of organizations, and trying to get any level of interest within any of those? I mean, obviously, there's no guarantee what you're going to find with any one of them, but, numbers are numbers.
Don't disagree.
Okay.
I think we already have a really well-established program in the EST, and that is something not only for the volunteers to grow, but also to build it for the career department. I mean, you're talking about taking a student in high school, right, where they may be indecisive, putting them in a career. Like, I wish I had this. I grew up in Baltimore County Public Schools. We didn't have it. But I can tell you that in Montgomery County, they have a cadet program, and every day 4 school buses come in with children of differing ages, and they've gotten their EMT already. They're going to come out with Fire 1, Fire 2. And when they leave, they can roll right into the academy and go. I mean, that is a pipeline for growth for this department. And the other thing to think about, and I've thought about, is not to reference Montgomery County, but they have a centralized recruiting office for all the volunteers, right? There may be several individual corporations, but somebody can walk into Rockville in that recruiting office, and you say, hey, I live in Poolsville. Okay, well, here's a Poolsville application packet. Here's the chief's number, here's the president's number, and I'll put you in contact. So they've streamlined that, and there's other things, and it can go toe-to-toe with even the career, but I think, number one, we have that well-established EST program, and that can really
I
benefit everyone.
apologize, I got break contact. I have a judge upstairs waiting for me. All good news, but still a judge.
Sure,
I want to
sure.
respect his time, so
Hey,
thank you.
I'll bang this one in your absence.
Just one other thing is, this is one of the, when I mentioned it too, about the U.S. Fire Administration and the recruitment and retention. One of the things that they talked about in here that includes initiatives like apprenticeships, the chief has talked about that, and internships, supplemental educational programs, as well as tax, housing, and other incentives. I do know in a lot of counties, there's, I think Queen Anne's County down on the shore, they have a tax benefit program down there for their volunteer firefighters. Yeah, we got LoSAP, they have LoSAP too. But there's the things, and I look at that is that a young person can sit down there who is still riding and functioning on a piece of apparatus and will able to take advantage of some of those things. I think it's something that needs to be looked at, something, again, a little bit different, but we got to try to do something. That's all I have on my agenda.
Anything
Didn't know if
else?
any other buddy on the board had anything else that they wanted to say as a close?
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you all.
Thank
for-
you.
Yeah.
Always nice seeing you. Do you want to do a podcast?
Sure.
Are we done?
So.
Thank you.